If you're going into the criminal justice system, you really got to start thinking today about what seeds can you sow to position yourself for the future that you want to build. There's always more opportunities in the future than there is in the past, but only if you prepare. And you might not really get that feeling when you're going through the journey and you've got a lot of people pulling strings in your life. In fact, during that time, sometimes you might feel like a marionette, where there's somebody pulling the strings and they determine whether your arms go up or your moves. I remember those kinds of puppets when I was a kid. And that's kind of how I felt after I got arrested. See, I was arrested on August the 11th, 1987. Because of the seriousness of my charges, I was locked in solitary confinement. I'd never been incarcerated before, so I really didn't understand what to expect. The only thing I wanted was to get out of jail, right? But that didn't matter what I want. What really mattered was, what do the stakeholders want? And that doesn't only apply to the time after your arrest, but it applies all the way through the journey. My name is Michael Santos, and I am the founder of Prison Professors. We're a nonprofit that provides free information. We're a non-revenue generating website. Everything is free because I'm deeply committed to trying to give you the resources you need to make better decisions, to improve outcomes. I always make 3 promises to anybody who visits Prison Professors, and I'll share my window right there so you could actually see the screen itself. This is the home page of the website, where it says, we strive to guide people towards success. You can get free, accessible lessons to empower your pursuit of excellence. But this website is a non-revenue generating website. It provides free insight to help more people work toward earning freedom through merit. But nobody should work harder than you to get the outcome that you want. And the sooner you learn that you have the ability to influence the future that you're going to experience, the better off you will be at architecting an effective mitigation strategy. And the good news is, it's never too early and it's never too late to get started. The key is that you have to really understand the process of what is going to follow. I did not understand that. When I was locked up, my attorney, I didn't have a good attorney. I hired an attorney that, everybody told me, oh, he's the best attorney in all of Miami. So even though I was charged in Seattle, my indictment was out of Seattle for operating a continuing criminal enterprise, which is a very serious drug offense. I was very young. But, I faced really serious charges because I'd made some really bad decisions, and I was guilty. But my attorney told me there's a big difference between an indictment and a conviction, and with the right amount of money you could win. And I really wanted to believe that, because I did not see myself as a criminal, even though I'd been breaking the law every day for longer than a year while I was trafficking in cocaine. So I made really bad decisions after my arrest, primarily because I did not understand the system. And then they locked me in solitary confinement, where I spent the first year going through the judicial process, again, not understanding the system, and allowing my defense attorney to pull all the strings, the prosecutor to pull all the strings, and then the probation officer to pull all the strings after I was convicted, right? I'm just locked in the hole. And I'm believing, or deluding myself into believing, I'm going to get the outcome that I want, even though I'm not doing anything about it. And that's not a very prudent path for somebody who is facing serious charges. And any time that you are facing charges that could put your liberty on the line, never underestimate how important your response is. You are the one that's going to have the most influence on the journey ahead. You are the one that's going to have to decide, should I accept a plea agreement? Should I go to trial? Should I testify at trial? I made every bad decision a guy could make because I didn't understand the system. I wasn't ready to accept responsibility. I wanted to believe my attorney could get me out of this. It was a very, very bad, strategically flawed decision with all the wisdom of a 20-year-old. Don't make that decision. Go through Prison Professors' website, look at our daily blog, and learn. You've got to educate yourself on what's coming and what can you do Don't just wait for your defense attorney. What can you do? The more thought you give to that, the more effective you are going to be at engineering a pathway. Engineering a pathway that can lead to success. I always use this analogy of be the CEO of your life. You cannot change the past. You've made decisions, and you're going to have to live with those decisions. Okay, they exist. What you've got to be thinking about is architecting your way to the best possible outcome. And for most people, the best possible outcome is going to be, I want to get out of here at the soonest possible time. It may not be tomorrow, okay? In my case, it was multiple decades, but you've got to have that mindset that says, I'm going to focus on the best possible outcome. And if you focus on the best possible outcome, you could take the next step, and that's create a plan. That plan is going to say, okay, what can I do to influence the process at various stages of the journey? Maybe starting with how prosecutors are going to charge you. Maybe continuing with how you're going to influence the probation report called the pre-sentence investigation report. Maybe continuing with how are you going to influence sentencing with your allocution. Maybe continuing by figuring out what kind of mitigation strategy can you create that will position you for administrative relief while you're in prison. And then what can you do to position yourself for the highest level of liberty at the soonest possible time and to go on to build a career that allows you to live with meaning and relevance and dignity as a fully immersed citizen in society? That is not going to happen if you don't start sowing seeds for success. And in this blog, I told you to visit our website where I publish blogs every single day. And I was looking at an interesting blog, or I think it was an interesting blog because it reminds me of what I felt when I was in prison. And this one I published on April the 29th, 2029, and it's called The Matthew Effect. And it's really a biblical analogy. See, when I was arrested, I was locked in solitary confinement, and I didn't get to talk to anybody else who was in prison, and I didn't have any courses or really any books to start with in the beginning because you're like in total isolation and you don't know, you only have what's in the cell, right? They give you everything. You're living in this cell that's you could stretch your arms and I could touch, walls on each side. You feel the pressure of the ceiling and the floor closing in. It's all concrete, and you're alone the entire day. And I was there for a year, but there was a Bible in there. And my strategy, and I was not a religious person. I've never been a religious person, but I believe in God. And I was raised Catholic. And so I was an altar boy when I was a kid. And it's not unfamiliar for me to read the Bible. And that's what I would do. I would start with the book of Genesis and read a few, pages every day. In the beginning, I probably read hundreds of pages because I was so alone. But I got strength from reading that Bible. And I'd start with Genesis and go all the way to the book of Revelation. And then I'd just go back to Genesis and start over again. And that was a path that didn't only carry me through solitary confinement, but it carried me all the way through the 9,500 days that I served in prison. So there were some stories in there that had a really big influence on my journey. One of them, of course, was right in the book of Genesis, and it was the story of Joseph, who was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, but he made a lot of good decisions that built himself as a person of influence to the king, as I recall, and he even served some time in jail because he was betrayed by the king's wife, I think, as I recall, but he got himself out, and that whole analogy of 7 years of feast followed by 7 years of famine, that's attributed to that story of Joseph as I remember it. But I got a different message from it besides that, and that's the harder you work on yourself, the more effective you are going to be at influencing other people who might come into your life and advocate for you and have an influence on your future. Another great story was in the New Testament was the prodigal son, which many people are familiar with. It's a very common, one of the more popular biblical stories for Christians. And it's the story of this kid who is kind of like I was when I was young, just after a fast life, and he took his inheritance and he went and lived this life of profligacy, lost everything, and then was like living with the pigs or something, and realized he wanted to do better and went back to his father, and his father welcomed him. And of course there was resentment. His older brother resented him for being able to get privilege. But there's a message in that story, right? When you come into the criminal justice system, you might find people who will welcome you, but there will also be people who reject you, right? There will always be people who see me as a guy who had a 45-year sentence. And regardless of what good I do, they're always going to look back, well, he was convicted of a drug case, and that's okay. That's part of the journey. And the more you could understand the journey, the better off you're going to be. And I would say that's going to take me to the most influential story in the Bible for me. I don't know what's influence for you, but it's this story called the Matthew effect, or at least that's what I got a kick out of it because I was reading a book, and the author, the book is called The Black Swan. The author spoke about the Matthew effect, and he was referring to the same biblical story that influenced me while I was in prison. And it says, what is the Matthew effect? The Matthew effect takes its name from the Gospel of Matthew. The verse reads, "For into everyone that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even at which he hath." Right? So one of the big challenges, of course, of getting your education from a solitary cell is trying to figure out all of this old Shakespearean language. But that story really relates to this story called the parable of the talents. Now, I didn't know what a talent was, so you have to read a lot of times over, but I'm going to try and paraphrase it for you and use today's language. So think of a talent as a batch of money. And the master has 3 servants, and those 3 servants, he trusts them. So he's going to go on a long trip, and the master says to servant number 1, "I'm going to be on a trip, so I'm going to give you 10 talents, and I want you to look after them for me." Okay. He goes to the second servant. "I'm going on this trip, and I'm going to leave you with 5 talents, and I want you to look after them for me." Second servant says, "Fine." Servant number 3, "I'm going to leave you with 1 talent because I'm going on a trip, and I want you to care for it for me, and I'll see you when I return." And the master goes on his journey, but he comes back. And when he comes back, he goes to servant number 1. "Well, I'm back. How did you do with my talent?" And the servant says, "Master, I know you're an individual who really appreciates hard work, and I took your 10 talents that you left me with, and I invested them, and I got 10 talents back. So here are the 10 talents you gave me, and 10 additional talents in profit that I made for you." And the master was very happy, and he said, you did an excellent job. Congratulations." And he went to the second servant. He said, "How did you do?" And the second servant said the same thing, basically. "Master, I know that you like to reap rewards, so I invested your 5 talents, and now here are the 5 talents that you gave to me, and here are the additional 5 talents that I earned in profit." And the master was very pleased, and he thanked the servant. And then he went to the third servant, and he asked him, "How did you do?" And he said, "Master, I know that you're a person who really values what you have and you don't want to lose anything. So I took your 1 talent and I buried it in the dirt so we wouldn't take any risk and we wouldn't lose it. And now that you're back, here it is, your talent. I'm very pleased to present it back to you." And the master was livid with him. And I think even, it was just livid with the third servant. And he took the talent away from him and he gave it to the person that had done well with the 10 talents. And that's that message of the story. What is it in your view? The harder you work, the more you're going to be rewarded. The more you live as somebody who's a victim mentality and always complaining about it's not my fault and it's not fair and I got to protect myself and I can't take any risk and all that nonsense, right? You're not only not going to get any benefits or rewards, but you're going to lose what you have. The Matthew effect tells you have got to be willing to invest in yourself. Build a body of work that brings more value to the world. And if you do that, you're going to find people who will believe in you and they will invest in you and they may advocate for you. And if you read my book, Earning Freedom, Conquering a 45-Year Sentence, you're going to read how many times that happened for me throughout the journey. Whether it was after I got to prison and I got university professors to come and visit me and mentor me, whether it was publishing houses who gave me opportunities to publish my books, which allowed me to earn money. And then with money, it was then able to work with my sister, starting to invest money in the stock market, and I could make money in prison, which eventually led me that money to meet my wife, Carol, and support her while she was becoming a nurse. And we started to build our life together and start preparing for the future, whether it was when I got out of prison and was able to raise capital so that I could build a career that would generate revenues so that I could do what I really want to do, which is to change America's prison system so that fewer people go inside. And I could do it for free. In fact, there's always 3 promises that I make. And that's number 1, I'm never going to lie to you. Number 2, I'm never going to ask anybody in our community to do anything that I didn't do while I was in prison or that I've been doing since I've come home. And number 3, I'm never going to ask anybody who's a member of the prison professors community to pay me for any of the work that I do to build prison professors. My job is to change this system and to show you the strategies that worked for me. I believe they can work for you. Nobody should work harder for your liberty than you. And I really would encourage you to become a member of our community by visiting the website, right? Go through all of the lessons, go through the courses. They're free. There's all kinds of information there that will help you along the journey. And but pay attention to that thing that we're guiding people towards success. I can't do it for you. Nobody can. Okay, but I can show you the strategies that worked for me, and that's what you will see here through this journey. In fact, if you look here, even on, I have my accountability logs where you'll see what I'm doing, blogs every day, influences. If you scroll through here, you can see the various timeline that takes you all the way through my journey, various stages. And you can click on it and read about what I wrote.
I'm reading about.
I mean, there's just all kinds of free information here, but you have to, none of this is about me. I'm home. I've been home since August the 12th, 2013 is when I finished my obligation to the Bureau of Prisons. I've got my career set. Everything I do now is really about a ministry that I strive to give things away for free because I believe in you. I want to see more people working to earn freedom and get out of prison with their dignity intact and go on to live a life of prosperity and abundance. If I am going to invoke the words of one of my mentors, I want to be the change that I want to see in the world. Your challenge is to figure out which mentor it was who said that. It's pretty famous, so you should be able to figure that out. But please subscribe to us or follow us on social media. Get our newsletter, and we'll provide as much information as we possibly can. My name is Michael Santos. I'm the founder of Prison Professors, and I believe in you. Be cool.